Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. Today I have Ken Sternfeld, founder and who is in charge of new business development at RXVIP Enterprises. He's going to talk to us a little bit today about remote APPE, also about the residency that's available with them. So welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Thanks, Tony. Nice to be here. How are you today?
Pretty good. I'm just finishing up Celebrate Innovation Week here at DMAC. We had a number of astronauts come over. Not the CEO of Facebook, but Mark Zuckerberg's sister, Randy Zuckerberg, was here. And so, kind of ready to talk entrepreneurship and shop, and you're probably one of the best people to talk about with this. But I have something that somebody told me that I was like, wow, I don't know if I have done this in a while. I haven't talked to a pharmacist that's older than me in years.
Well. We're setting the bar, Tony.
I'm 46, yes. So I generally all the people I interview are, coming into pharmacy school, graduating pharmacy school. So I was actually extremely excited to talk to you because it's rare that I have somebody that has a perspective that's not better than mine, but certainly has more longitudinal perspective than me. So tell us a little bit about what you do before we start off, and then we'll start with the APPE students, then how they might get into residency after.
Well, thank you. And it's about 18 years. I'm looking for that Medicare red, white, and blue card in September. So I'll be
Awesome.
65.
Awesome.
But actually, my career path is kind of a little unique because out of those 65 years, I took a 30-year break from pharmacy. When I graduated at St. John's in 2000, and look at me, it's 1979. That's what happens, Tony, when you get old. When I graduated in 1979, I went to work for my father-in-law in consumer electronics. I had been working in pharmacy all through school, and there was the vision of owning my own store with a partner who I was working with at the retail environment, but things didn't work out. There weren't as many options as there are today for the next generation of PharmDs. So I went to work with my father-in-law in consumer electronics, and I took a very long break. And I learned about the business of consumer electronics. I started as a salesperson, became the manager, executive vice president, and took over the company in 1989 from my father-in-law. And I ran the company for a number of years and learned a lot about interpersonal relationships, about communication, about marketing. And just the fact that I was a pharmacist I wasn't even working as a pharmacist. My dad was a pharmacist, so I had actually kind of disappointed my mom when I went to work in consumer electronics because they didn't look at that as I was using my diploma or my license. But I came back, Tony, and I came back in 2008 when I got my license renewed and got a job at CVS Health and started as a staff pharmacist, a floater, a pharmacy manager, and then I was with them for almost 10 years.
Well, that's definitely something I want to talk about, which is you put in X number of dollars, X amount of time. Now, I paid $4,000 a year for 4 years. That probably is way more than you paid.
It was $1,500, and I actually took out, because at that point I had gone to Queens College for 2 years as a music major, and then when I transferred to St. John's, I did it because my friend was going to medical school there. I had no intention of going to pharmacy school. I went over and we're at the admissions room, and he says, I'm looking up, and he says, why don't you do this? I said, okay, and I enrolled. It's a true story. I came home, my mother said, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, I'm going to be a pharmacist. They transferred none of my 50 some odd credits. I started from scratch. And at that time, as you remember, it was a 5-year course. So I finished that course and made my dad proud. Sadly, he didn't live to see me graduate, but he was very proud when I enrolled in St. John's because he was a pharmacist and owned an independent store for about 55 years. So I'm doing a lot of what I do in his memory.
Okay. I I think I was very proud. Certainly at graduation, my dad, got a bunch of the programs, and because now the doctorate is there, and doctor goes before his last name, but definitely have that attachment with my dad that always want to make him proud as well. But let's talk a little bit about these APPEs, and first I want to find out: do you have APPE students that work with you where you are, or is everything remote?
No, we do two APP rotations.
Okay.
One is an ambulatory care program where they come to the physician's practice. We have two practice sites here on Long Island, one in Bellmore at the office of Dr. Michael Goodman, and one in Great Neck at the office of Dr. Adam Cohn. Dr. Goodman is my personal doctor, and I went to him, and that's actually where RXVIP was born. So the rotations that were remote were kind of an offshoot from, actually, I almost have to blame you, Tony, because you may not know this, but one of the most interesting articles I read, it was in 2017, it was in December in Pharmacy Times, and you wrote about is an option for students online. I think you interviewed a student from Creighton at that time,
Yeah.
and you talked about that. So here I am in July of 2017. I retired from CVS in 2017. I had some disabilities and just decided that the RxVIP model was going to be something I needed to do and wanted to do. And I read your article at the end of that year, and someone from Creighton, just about that same time, called me. And she says, would you be my preceptor at RxVIP? And I said, how did you find me? What is this? So she said, actually, she had followed some of the articles that you wrote, and one of her students, friends, and peers, because Creighton, as you know, they asked their students to go out and find rotations, and she found me, and it was really wonderful. Her name was Bethany Abrams, and it was the first remote appy that I did. She actually came to the facility and spent time with me, but she taught me about distant learning. So I felt that it wasn't about them being with you on rotation. It was about them being with you from an educational perspective. You didn't have to sit across the table from them to give them a thirst for knowledge. You didn't have to stand over them and count their hours, although we did, but make sure that they did the work. The extraordinary work that Bethany, and we've had other Creighton University students since then, did really told me that the rotation model is not actually have to do with putting that time in face-to-face, especially if we're talking about non-face-to-face encounters, which we were with chronic care management. So I'm blaming you, Tony,
Okay.
for all this.
I'll take the blame, and yeah, I was very fortunate to have two very good students from Creighton. One ended up with a hospital position right out of college. Didn't need the whole 6 years of residency or whatever it is, and then the other one went on to community residency. So that worked out really well, and I think that our model, I think schools will eventually change, but it's certainly slow coming. But tell me a little bit about how somebody would even do they have to get in touch with you directly first, and then, or are schools now on board? Because at Creighton, it's just that online group that has to get their own, and it's not because they wouldn't do it for them. It's that they're scattered around the country. So Creighton's based in Omaha, and so they have their Midwest rotations and so forth. But many of these students are not in Omaha and not in that area. So tell me a little bit about how someone starts the process with the schools that maybe you have an attachment to, and then how maybe they would ask their school for permission to do something like this.
Yeah, that's great, because we've been very fortunate. The next generation talk amongst themselves. So I'm a St. John's alumni. So as we're doing this precepting, of course, I went back to St. John's and I asked them if we could do not a remote version, but to do an appy. So we right now are accredited by, I believe, 6 or 7 universities. St. John's, LIU, Toro, University at Buffalo has been a very, very strong supporter of our initiatives. I believe we do Arizona, and we're working right now on a program, very extensive program with Southeast Nova down in Florida to do a very collaborative practice rotation where students learn early about how to collaborate with physicians, and then we put them in physician offices after they graduate, kind of a work study program. I can talk a little bit more about that later. But in University of Buffalo, those young professionals there, I guess it's the snow that gets to them, but they were looking for more. They came with a thirst for knowledge. So I was very close with the people up there. Pete Brody at that time was heading up the experiential area. And I said, Pete, in pharmacogenetics, the kids really love it. It's something new. It's something innovative. So would you allow us to test out and to pilot a program where, in addition to the ambulatory care option, we give them an elective to really dive deep into what I believe is something every pharmacist should be involved with? And Pete was very, very open to it. And the Chris and Pam, the people who do the IPI and APPIs, were also very supportive. And that was the birth of the rotation that was completely remote, where I do rotations with students as far as I did one in December where a student was in Korea. And we were able to train her and get her deeply involved. And now she's actually going to be working for RXVIP after graduation. So that's how it started.
Oh, that's great. So I guess what my concern with the APPIs is that there's so much that's required by ACPE that you have to do this one and this one and this one and this one. And those traditional roles in many ways are saturated. I just heard on RX Radio the golden job, the critical care rotation. The pharmacist was living in Florida, and he's just finished his PGY2. He had done burn specialty or something like that in critical care. And he said, yeah, critical care is kind of saturated. And that was just kind of a shock to me to hear that, well, are these clinical positions kind of filling up as well? So my question to you is, how do these APPIs prepare someone to kind of make their own job? Because that's what that guy ended up doing, is that he found a supervisor position, kind of added his own clinical stuff that he wanted to do, and made a job for himself. Worked with the hospital's budget cycle and all these things. But I don't know that most students would be able to do that. What does your APPI give in terms of collaboration, cooperation with other entities to kind of expand the role of the profession?
That's really exactly what we focus on. I think it's so challenging that these young professionals need to make decisions on their career so early in their life. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So the point that we make with them is that the prime job, the best job for you, is the job that keeps you inspired, keeps you motivated, and keeps you focused on the patient. Any job opportunity, in my opinion, that takes you further away from the patient takes you further away from why I went to school and perhaps why you went to school, because patient-centric care has to be a focus. And you can have a job that will be making you a lot of money, doing a lot of different things, but I believe the further you get away from the patient, the further as a profession, we actually sometimes could be moving further away from provider status. So I teach them communication skills. I give them confidence. I build up their credibility that they are a care provider. Today, with 5.5 years of clinical knowledge coming out of a pharmacy school, these young professionals are medication experts. They know. They don't have the communication skills. They don't have, in some cases, the confidence. So what we do in our electives is we give them the opportunity to be very open-minded. And you know what? The world changes. Healthcare landscapes change. To set what you want to be a year from now or 2 years from now and follow a set path, the healthcare industry is going to change. That's the only constant. So what we do is we talk about collaboration. It's the word that we start with from day one, because healthcare is about partnering with other healthcare providers so that you can deliver total patient-centric care. So you can be a provider today through collaborative business agreements that will allow you to offer incident to, direct and indirect services. Yes, we can't bill directly to insurance. You know what? I think that's a blessing. Have you been dealing with insurances lately?
Yeah.
So we give them the confidence that they are care providers. And the people we tell them that they should be working for are the patients. So in our remote APPIs, we spend a lot of time listening to them. Each happy student I talk to, I say, blank piece of paper. Where would you like to go? What would you like to accomplish in your career? Where do you see yourself being fulfilled personally, professionally? And then we'll talk about how we can create an opportunity for you so you can be financially rewarded, to give you the opportunity to feel recognized and to feel respected and to feel needed in the healthcare continuum. And that's about listening as much as it is about talking, Tony. And you know that because you talk and listen and interview more, in my opinion, more next generation PharmDs than anybody. I look up to you, and I listen to your podcast, on the Pharmacy Podcast Network, not because I have to, because Todd makes me, but because I want to. And I think the commitment to the next generation that you're making and that we're making is really what is going to lead us to provider status, because these young professionals are brilliant, and we got to give them an opportunity to give back to them for what they can positively do for the profession, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk a little bit about money, and then we'll move on to the residency. So I was fortunate enough to have students in a J term. It's a January term. They were here 3 weeks, and every once in a while I could hire one of them, or I would hire a pharmacy student from down the road, and they would help me here at the college. But I'm not allowed to pay them during the APPEs. But I am allowed to pay someone after they've been my APPE student as an employee if I want to do something with, my side businesses and things like that. Tell me a little bit about the opportunities that someone would have after they did your APPE, whether in person or remote.
That's exactly what we do, Tony. We adhere to all of the guidelines. None of our APPEs or IPPEs or anyone else is compensated. It's a learning, educational pathway. But in the beginning, we advise them that if this is something you want, we offer a job position to every APPE. There's no match on next Friday. Next Friday, they're going to be PharmD candidates standing on a ledge waiting for a match to a residency program. It's a terrible day. I think it should be a national holiday to give these kids a day off.
It's a couple weeks away. Is it? It's
no.
Soon.
It's a week. It's a week from tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
It's a week from tomorrow. It's like D-Day. I mean, just imagine putting 6 years in, spending a couple $100,000, and you have to sit there for some lottery system that could tell you if you're going to North Carolina, San Diego, or nowhere, and then you have to take a job flipping burgers at retail pharmacy. Anyway, I digress. But the point is that we give every single student a job offer. Let me back up. We give them a career option, whether it's 1 day a week that they could work with us in a physician's office, because that's our model, on 1 day a week. So if they get a job at Walgreens or CVS, they're going to get a day off, unless things are really bad where they have to work 7 days. Then you work with us in a physician's office. We pay you like a provider based on the encounters you do. If I've trained you how to do this, wouldn't it make sense to keep you? Why would you turn out that talent and not utilize it? So we don't ever pay anyone, but we tell them, if you're interested, you could stay with us in marketing, if that's what you like. You could stay with us to do community outreach, which we pay them for, if you're interested. You could stay with us to do chronic care management, do it remotely from your dorm room, or or when you get home from work after working in the hospital. You can do pharmacogenetics and introduce that to physicians all across in your neighborhood. You could do all of this because we've taught you that these are things we believe a concierge service provider, a PharmD, a pharmacist, a student of pharmacy should be doing to advance their career. And the response we get is tremendous. Just last week, I had an opportunity to go to a committee meeting. I sit on a committee for Lymphoma and Leukemia Society. Sadly, both my parents died from that disease. So I raise money and awareness, and I'm part of their committee to do programs here on Long Island. And I just sent an email to a couple of the students. It's not a requirement for them to come. It was after hours. Well, three happy students who aren't even on rotation with me anymore showed up. And they want to be involved, and they want to help. So, we're connecting with the APPE, and we're connecting with the student, we're connecting with the care provider by really just caring for them. We show them that we care for them. It's not a logo. It's not a little red heart on a lab coat. It's not we care KPM numbers at a CVS. We really care about the future of these young professionals, and they feel it, and they want to stay with us. That's the most rewarding thing that we do.
So tell me, are you expecting residency matches in a week, or is your residency coming for the next cycle?
We're going to, and I actually had this conversation, we do twice a week conference calls with the remote appies and our ambulatory care, and I did one this afternoon. And that's when they told me, I didn't know it was next Friday, because one of them asked me, because we were going to have a call next Friday, he says, can you do me a favor? Can we make it Thursday? Because Friday I'm going to be jumping out the window. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, that's match day, and at 12 o'clock you sit by the computer, and it's like a wheel of not fortune. I don't know. So I said, sure, and he told me about it. And on that phone call, I learned. I forgot your question. Your question was, the match.
Yeah.
I said to them, everyone. I asked how many people were doing residencies. I knew two of them because I had actually helped them with letters of intent. Which you do also, by the way, commending what you do, offering that service. So I said, I will match any. I don't mean match dollars, but I will. We're actually going to pay you more. I said, if you don't get what you want, you call me. We have an opportunity with a nationwide company who's retained us to put PharmDs in physician offices all across the country. Okay, it's a company called Care One. And they have recognized our commitment to the students of pharmacy, the next generation. And they said, we want you to go into those offices and staff them. And I said, it would be my pleasure, our pleasure as a company. So I said, if you're not getting what you want out of your career, the door is always open to RXVIP. And I'll put you in a residency program. And we created that, and we have created that. If anyone's interested, you could do it 1 day a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. You could do as much as you want and earn as much as you want based on doing patient encounters in physician offices. So that's our residency program. It doesn't have accreditation. It doesn't have letters after the name. But I want our kids to have residency at RxVIP. I want them to stay. They're part of our family.
I guess that's what is concerning me so much about this group, and is that the path, we had the 5 years, and I only missed the 5 years by 1 year. If I had gotten everything done in 2 years like I was supposed to, I would have been a 5-year bachelor's pharmacist. But I guess there's kind of this unsaid promise that if you do bachelor's degree, PharmD, 2 years residency, that your job is there waiting for you at the end. And so maybe you've given up having kids or, all kinds of things. But there you are, 28 years old. It's going to be July when you get your first job. That just seems like a long time to wait to actually be in the workforce. What do you think about, getting experiences like yours before then? And this is someplace where Richard Waith and I may disagree. He says, focus on school, do what you're supposed to. He still says be innovative, but, focus on school, where I say, there's Steve Jobs and he didn't do so. He got out of school. Zuckerberg got out of school. Bill Gates got out of school. Those guys did okay. So I'm not saying quit school, but tell me, what are the experiences that you would mentor somebody to get before they graduated? Because I feel like ACPE saying, hey, you got to have a hospital, a community, and so forth. I just don't think that really gets you to where you would feel comfortable getting in front of someone who you maybe have a small relationship with, no relationship with, and saying, hey, I'd like to work with you in your office. Because that takes a lot of courage and that takes a lot of communication skill. And I don't know that the accreditation document really gets you to that level of ability or that level of courage. What do you think?
Well, I think our profession has broken that promise, Tony, that you mentioned. There's nothing wrong with paying for an education and following the pathway and going through the traditional model and following everything you need to do. But when the profession you do it doesn't have the respect to give you an opportunity to actually practice that profession, we have let them down. I believe that we do not enough. We burden them with student debt, and then we say, we're done with you. We've collected. Now go. Now, I believe that experience separates the men from the boys. I believe that there are scholastic challenges and opportunities you absolutely need to do. But there comes a time when you need to do it because that's the only way you will learn it. There's classroom didactic learning, and then there's real life. So whether it's at 26 or 28 or 24, or quite honestly, even while they're in school, they should be doing experiences that will mold them and make them a more well-rounded opportunity for someone to hire them. I told my appies today, as they're preparing resumes, don't just send them to the pharmacies. Send your resume to doctors. I've gotten 3 pharmacist jobs because they sent their resume that put down the things that they do as RXVIP concierge care providers, and they are getting jobs and they sent their resume to a doctor.
Huh.
The physicians cannot deny that there's a value to that pharmacist. But the problem is when we walk in, we say, oh, by the way, when are you going to pay me $120,000? Well, it doesn't work. Listen,
Sorry.
we created the model. I had the model. Here I am leaving CVS. I was with them 10 years. I was Paragon winner 2 times, an emerging
I won
leader.
one too. I won the Paragon.
Yeah. Well, I became an emerging leader, then a submerging leader. That's how it works.
Sorry, I need a minute for that one.
I know. Listen. Once you tell them you're not part of the future, you become part of their past. We can't talk about that, because we amicably leave those relationships behind us. But at the end of the day, in 10 years at CVS, all I can tell you and anyone listening is they taught me a lot, but they didn't teach me one thing about how to be a better pharmacist. And you know what? That's their shortcoming. That's their failure. That's why people won't even take offers for them unless they have to. I've seen so many interns who I worked with when I was there, great future pharmacists, not even take the offer because they know the horrific environments that are there and they don't want it. There's a lack of respect. But let's look at the opportunity that creates to take that individual and wrap your arms around them and say, you know what? You are valued. We do want you. You can make a difference. That's the difference of what we do. So again, I get off topic, but what was the question?
We'll not beat down CVS and retail and all that. I worked for them for a while, and I was very fortunate to work with some good people over there. And yeah, I haven't been in. I guess I never told you this, but I actually left retail probably 7 or 8 years into my career, and I never really had a full-time job after that. I might have worked a little bit, but my career only lasted 7 years in retail, and then I was kind of onto the entrepreneurial races. But no, I guess what I was really asking is, how can we integrate? So I just published this episode like a couple hours ago. A couple of students started a Toastmasters group in their College of Pharmacy at Iowa, and they recognized the need to be able to communicate and talk to people and things like that. I think that communication with the physicians, besides it's part of the accreditation document, we're interprofessionals, we have to go way past that to how do I talk to a physician and say, I'd like to work with you and I'd like to, kind of create this synergy so that both of us benefit, when they've never really had to ask for the sale. And I hate to use the sale, but they've never had to have an ask where they'll get rejected. The rejection is so absent in pharmacy school. So how do you get them built up over 5 weeks or continue to build them up as an employee?
That's a great question, and here's what we do. First of all, saying no, that's when the selling starts. And it's not selling. It's branding. It's personal branding.
Sure.
What I do with our students from day one is I say, I don't care if you're required to do one outreach program in your curriculum at school. Outreach is the reason that you can make a difference. Your ability to talk to patients, your ability to communicate, to talk to them on their level, to listen to them, to talk about things that make a difference in their life will lead you to a peer-to-peer dialogue with a physician. If you can walk into a physician's office with the confidence that you can talk to his or her patients, that's all you need. And then it's almost like, let me show you. I went in, and for the first several months, I didn't make a nickel at Dr. Goodman's office. I said, let me come in on Pharmacy Friday. Let me sit here with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. The newspaper used to actually read it with paper, you turn the paper.
Sure.
And I said, let me see if the patients like to talk to a pharmacist. And he said, all right, let's do that. Well, 3 or 4 weeks later, I'm getting more appointments than he is because I'm able to talk to a patient. I'm able to listen. That's the knowledge that we need to instill on our next generation. I would be hard pressed to hire someone who has no retail experience. I listen to students who say, listen, I'm not going in retail. It's terrible. I don't want it. I want a hospital. I want a PG this. I want industry. I want industry. I'm fellowship on this. I say, all right, that's great. That's a great pathway. But I have to tell you, if you don't feel the burn, if you're not in a retail pharmacy on a day when there are 18 pages in the queue, and Mrs. Smith with her baby is screaming because no one's mixing her Z-Pack for her kid or whatever, you have to feel the burn. And you have to recognize that you are there to take care of them. You are there. They're not coming in to see you because they like you. They're showing up because they're sick. They're cranky. Someone in their family is sick. They don't want to hear anything but a smile or see a smile, be addressing them by name. Treat these people like you want to be treated. If there are 3 people online at the bank on your lunch hour and there's only one teller, you say, excuse me, can we get some help here? Those are the cultures. Be the patient. And if you're the patient and treat those patients with respect, you're able to communicate. Every one of my students who comes into the office on their first day in the practice gets introduced to the physician. And they're told, be engaging. When you come in every day, don't just walk past the receptionist. Say hello. Say you're here. By the way, if you have any prior authorizations, let me see if I can help you. Talk about what makes you a valuable asset. And then people will pay you. They will. They do. We proved it.
So it sounds like this give, ask, receive model, which is what I think you're doing, is working really well. And I'm not faulting them, but it sounds like we keep hearing a receive model, like I have paid the school, so I'm going to receive this job, and I just don't think that's the way it's going to go for a lot of people, and I'm very nervous for a lot of people because I think if you went to residency and didn't get a job beforehand, I can't imagine going into the job market in March before May, trying to hope for a job. But it sounds like you have opportunities for people that are willing to reach out to you, that have some experience. Maybe they, only picked Mayo and thought they were going there, and that didn't work out for them. But as maybe our final kind of thing together, what are the kinds of characteristics in a person who maybe didn't match that should reach out to you?
Well, we're interested in any 2019 PharmD graduate, whether they're matched or not matched, because we believe it's their time. It's their time to shine. And they only have one chance to make a first impression in this industry. And I would like to do our part as RXVIP, even if it's 1 day a week, even if it's 1 shift a month, even if it's anything that they can do. I would like our team, our company, our culture to be embedded into the lifeline of the next generation. So if you graduated last year and, you maybe had a tough year under your belt, at retail, or you're finishing up your first PG1 and maybe you're going to do a PG2. There's nothing to stop anyone in the pharmacy industry from reaching out to us. If you have a heart, if you care, if you want to practice at the height of your diploma, because we don't dispense any medication. I don't care where they shop, at CVS or Walgreens or the corner drugstore. We're there to help them as the best pharmacists we can be. So I want oldies like me. Tony, if you're not too busy, I'm not saying you're old. I got you by 18 years. But you know what? You've reinvented yourself. And there's always an opportunity to reinvent and reinvent again. Because if you're not reinventing, your life is over. And I don't mean you personally, but you always have to look to be better tomorrow than you are today. And that's what we hope our pharmacists of the next generation will do, just by getting a taste of an organization that is focused on the patient, not the metrics, not the business. The business is there.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ken, thanks so much for being on the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
My pleasure, Tony. Let's do it again.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.